Welcome back to Spooky Stories. Tonight we have 5 terrifying encounters that will keep you awake long after the video ends. Our first story comes from Adam, who takes us into the Appalachian Mountains near Morgantown, West Virginia. What began as a family road trip turned into a nightmare when they were forced to stay in a secluded guest house, a place that revealed something darker than shelter. Next, from the Rocky Mountains of Colorado, Michael shares the chilling events that unfolded when his family visited a hotel with a forbidden basement. What they discovered below the ground was never meant to be seen by the living. Then we travel south to North Carolina, where a family found themselves trapped inside a house that didn't just shelter them, it fed on them. Their story, The House That Fed on Us, is a haunting reminder that some homes take more than they give. Our fourth story takes us to Pennsylvania, where a family inherited the house that wouldn't let us go. From children's laughter echoing in empty rooms to strangers warning them to leave, this house held secrets that refused to stay buried. And finally, we hear from Ahmed, whose haunting began not in a house, but in his own room. A woman in red entered his life, leaving behind blood, fear, and a presence so strong that even spiritual help could not erase her completely. These 5 true encounters will drag you into the shadows where fear takes form. So turn off the lights, sit back, and prepare yourself. Tonight's stories will follow you long after the screen goes dark. My name is Adam. This happened back in the summer of 2017. My family had planned a road trip through the Appalachian Mountains. There were 3 SUVs in our group, uncles, cousins, aunts, everyone traveling together. It was supposed to be fun, but heavy rain slowed us down right from the start. We'd left late because one of our cousins was joining us from Pittsburgh, and by the time we regrouped outside of Morgantown, it was already after 1 p.m. The rain only got worse as the afternoon dragged on. At one point, one of our cars, driven by my cousin Daniel, accidentally took the wrong highway. He thought we were ahead of him, so instead of slowing down, he just kept driving faster, trying to catch up. With no phone reception in those mountains, we couldn't reach him. By the time Daniel realized he was lost and managed to switch his SIM card to some prepaid local carrier, we were already waiting in a small mountain town, soaked and exhausted. It took him nearly 2 hours to get back to us. By then, night was falling. We didn't want to drive mountain roads after dark, especially in that storm, but we had no choice. Headlights on, hazard lights blinking so we wouldn't lose each other in the sheets of rain, we pressed on. Our lead driver was another cousin, Marcus. He knew those roads well. I was driving behind him, with Daniel in the last car. But soon enough, Marcus braked suddenly, and all of us had to stop. When we got out, we saw it. A landslide. Mud and rock had buried the road. We were stranded. Families in every car. No way forward, no easy way back. We waited for locals to show up, maybe tell us if crews would clear the road. Other cars pulled up, but most turned back. We just sat there in the rain,
headlights glowing against the mud, wondering what we were going to do. That's when a man approached. He looked like a mountain local, maybe in his late 50s, flannel shirt soaked through. He asked what was wrong, but it was obvious. Then he said something that seemed like a blessing at the time. "You folks can't stay out here with kids and families? A couple miles back, over the river, I've got a place. It's not a motel, but I keep it for guests sometimes. You can stay the night, cheap, just enough to cover the lights." We didn't have another option. We agreed. He told us to drive back about 2 miles, cross a narrow bridge, and meet his son who would show us to the house. And so we did. We crossed the bridge with our hearts in our throats. The river below was raging, swollen with rain, pounding against the supports, like it was trying to tear the whole thing down. The wooden planks of the bridge rattled under our tires. On the other side, the man's son was waiting with a flashlight. He guided us up a muddy track through thick, dripping forest until the trees opened into a clearing. That's when we saw it. A guest house. Old, weather-beaten. Its wood siding swollen and dark from decades of storms. On one side, a sheer drop into the Black River. On the other, endless forest. It wasn't a hotel, and you could tell. More like a hunting lodge from the 1950s. Forgotten except when the owner needed it. Still, it was shelter. The owner and his son helped us unload. He promised to bring food. And true to his word, he and his wife cooked us dinner. It took an hour, but when it came, it was hot and delicious. The house had only 3 rooms, and we had 3 families. Perfect. Almost too perfect. But the atmosphere was wrong. From the windows, we could see nothing but trees, cliffs, and the raging river. The sound of it filled the night, deep, rumbling, almost like a growl under the thunder. Even with the storm dying down, the river's voice felt alive, whispering through the walls. We ate. We laughed nervously. My parents went to bed early. My sister scrolled on her phone until her eyes closed. For me, I wasn't ready to sleep. Neither were my cousins. The owner had warned us not to go outside at night. He said wild dogs, but cousins never listen. We snuck out anyway, joking, yelling into the trees just to hear the echoes come back. And for a while it was funny, but it was also the start of everything that went wrong. Later that night, when everyone else was asleep, I slipped out onto the balcony to smoke. The balcony faced the river. The cold air bit my skin, and mist rose off the water like breath from something alive. That's when I saw him. A man, standing right by the riverbank. He was impossibly still, soaked to the bone, and he was looking straight at me. Not glancing, not curious, staring. At first, I told myself he was just another local, maybe wondering why strangers were staying there. But seconds dragged into minutes. He never moved, never blinked, just watched. At first, I told myself he was just another local, maybe wondering why strangers were staying there. But seconds dragged into minutes. He never moved, never blinked, just watched. I couldn't even finish my cigarette. I went back inside, heart pounding. That was the first time I felt it, that something about this place wasn't right. Sometime past midnight, I woke to a sound. At first, I thought I was dreaming, but as I lay still, I realized I knew those voices. It was our voices. The shouts, the laughter, the names we had screamed into the forest earlier that night. They were echoing back now, not as memory, not in my head, but outside the house, as if the woods had recorded them and decided to play them back. I froze. A knock came to my door. Daniel whispered, "Did you hear that?" We stood in the hall, listening. The echoes rose and fell in the distance, twisting our own voices into something mocking. Something was replaying us. We tried to sleep again, but my sister's scream tore through the night. We rushed to her room. She was sitting upright in bed, trembling, pointing at the curtain. There was someone standing there, right outside the window, watching me. The window opened to the same wooden balcony where I had smoked earlier. We pulled the curtain back. Wet footprints marked the balcony floorboards. Someone or something had been there, and it wasn't just her imagination.
Later, another scream came, this time from my little cousin, barely 12 years old. When we ran to her room, she was shaking, pointing at the old wooden wardrobe against the wall. "I heard it," she cried, "breathing from inside there." We opened it. Empty. Just dust and mothball scent. But her face, the terror in her eyes, told us she wasn't lying. At some point, the storm broke, leaving a silence almost worse than the rain. My father and I sat by the window, restless. That's when we saw it. A light, far out in the trees. It swayed gently, moving between trunks. Someone was walking in the forest carrying a lantern, and the figure holding it looked exactly like the man I had seen at the river. We watched in silence until the lantern winked out. Just when we thought the night couldn't get worse, the ceiling began to creak. Footsteps, running, stopping, then slow, deliberate pacing right above our heads. We rushed outside with flashlights, shining them up at the roof. Nothing. No one. Just rain-slick shingles. But the footsteps kept coming. The rain started again, heavier than before. Thunder cracked across the sky. And then we heard it. Steps on the balcony. Heavy, deliberate, moving back and forth. The wood groaned with each press, as if something too heavy for a man was walking just outside our door. Then came the knocking. Not normal knocking, a dull, hollow thud, as if something not quite human was testing the door. We froze. My mother whispered prayers, clutching her chest. My father whispered, "Don't open it. Don't move." The knocking didn't stop, and in that moment, every one of us understood. Whatever was outside wasn't just a person. Something else was here. Something that didn't want us in this house. The knocking grew harder, shaking the thin wood. My dad motioned for everyone to stay silent. We could hear the rain hammering the tin roof, but the thudding on the balcony door had its own rhythm, like a heartbeat. Suddenly, it stopped. The silence was worse. Then, faintly, came a whisper through the cracks of the door. It wasn't English. It wasn't even words we could recognize. A low, guttural murmur, like somebody speaking from underwater. My sister started crying. Daniel whispered, "It's trying to talk to us." But whatever it was, we couldn't understand it. We just stood there, staring at the door, waiting for it to break. From the hallway, a different sound rose. Giggling. Children's laughter, faint at first, then louder. But all the children in our group were huddled right there with us. None of them were out of bed. The laughter drifted down the hall and around the corners, as if invisible kids were running circles through the house. It echoed up the staircase, faded, then came back from behind us. One of my aunts whispered a prayer under her breath. The guest house felt alive, like walls and floors were breathing, carrying voices back and forth just to toy with us. My father decided to check the second floor. He grabbed a flashlight and started up the stairs with Marcus. I followed behind, even though everything in me screamed not to. The second floor had a single hallway and one locked door at the very end. All the other doors opened into empty rooms, but that last door had a padlock on it. As we got closer, the air grew colder. My flashlight flickered. We could hear scratching from behind the door, slow, deliberate, like claws on wood. Marcus reached for the lock, but the scratching stopped instantly. We all stood there, hearts pounding, when suddenly something slammed into the door from the inside, hard enough to make the frame shudder. Around 3:30 a.m., the owner came back. We could hear his truck crunching gravel outside. He walked in with his son, looking surprised to find all of us awake, huddled together in the living room. "What happened?" he asked. We tried to explain, talking over each other, describing the footsteps, the man by the river, the voices, the locked room upstairs. The owner's expression darkened. He turned to his son, muttered something under his breath, then looked at us and said, "Stay together. Don't open any doors. I'll be back." And then he left again, just like that. We heard his truck fade into the rain. We were alone. Minutes crawled by. The house was so quiet. We could hear the river outside. Then Daniel stiffened. "Do you see that?" At the end of the hallway stood a shape, not a person, a shadow thicker than the dark around it. It moved without moving, shifting like smoke caught in a jar. Two faint pinpoints glimmered where eyes should be. It stood there, watching us, just as the man by the river had watched me.
Then it slid sideways into the wall and was gone. The children began to sob. By dawn, none of us had slept. The rain had eased, but the fog outside was so dense we couldn't see the river anymore. When the first gray light seeped into the windows, my father said, "We're leaving, now." We didn't even pack properly. We grabbed what we could, threw it into the cars, and bolted. As we crossed the bridge back toward the main road, I glanced in the rearview mirror. The guest house stood there on the cliff, small against the mist. But on the balcony, a figure stood watching us. It looked exactly like me. Same clothes, same posture. It raised its hand slowly, palm outward, as if saying goodbye. I nearly drove off the bridge. We didn't stop driving until we reached a crowded gas station 2 towns away. Only then did we realize how shaken we all were. No one could explain what happened. No one wanted to go back. Later, when I tried to find the house again on a map, it wasn't there. The road ended at the river. No bridge, no clearing, no guest house. To this day, I don't know what that place was, or what watched us through those walls. All I know is this: sometimes the mountains hide things that aren't meant for people. And sometimes, when you get lost, the thing that offers you shelter isn't human at all.
My name is Michael. This happened years ago when my cousin was getting married. In my family, we have this tradition. Before a big wedding, we all take a trip together. It's like a farewell celebration before someone starts their new life. And this time, we decided to head up to the Rocky Mountains in Colorado. There were 8 or 10 families altogether: uncles, aunts, cousins, little kids. We rented out an entire train car and made it a rolling party. We stopped first in Chicago for a couple of days, then continued west until we finally reached Estes Park, right at the base of the Rockies. It was January. Bitter cold, snow piled high everywhere. By the time we reached the town's main street that night, it was late, and the place looked like something out of a postcard. Holiday lights, snow-covered rooftops, and mountains rising in the background. We checked out several hotels, but none of them felt right. Then, down one of the side streets, we found one. I won't name it here, but anyone who knows Estes Park probably knows which one I'm talking about. The strange thing? The entire hotel was underground. The entrance was at street level, but once you stepped inside, everything, lobby, dining area, rooms, was in the basement. We didn't think too much about it then. We just wanted warmth, food, and beds. So we checked in. The first couple of days were normal. We explored the town, enjoyed the snowy scenery, spent time together. But then, little things started happening. One night, my cousin was out on the balcony, smoking a cigarette. He came inside later, looking uneasy. He said, "While I was standing there, the chair next to me started rocking on its own." At first he ignored it, thought maybe it was just the wind, but when it happened more than once, it rattled him. Another cousin told us something too. She said, "While I was walking down the staircase, I swear someone was standing one step below me. I even saw a shadow, but when I reached the bottom, nobody was there." My uncle experienced something similar. He was out on the balcony, admiring the view, when he suddenly felt someone right behind him.
He turned around fast. No one. Just cold night air and silence. We tried to brush it off. Drafts, old wood, our imaginations, but the small incidents kept stacking up. One night, a cousin said someone kept knocking at their door. At first, they thought it was kids from our group playing around, but when they opened the door, the hallway was empty. Then the knocking came again, louder. This time, my cousin stormed out, ready to yell. But the hall was deserted. Silent. That's when the unease began to spread through the whole family. Later, as we all sat together, my brother admitted something he'd been keeping from us. He said, "Almost every night I've been hearing noises from the floors below. Furniture being dragged, doors slamming, but I didn't say anything because I didn't want to scare everyone." That made us all go quiet. The hotel had 5 floors in total. Our rooms were on the 3rd. The top 2 floors were still usable, but the lower ones? Completely abandoned. Broken doors, old stained mattresses piled in corners, dust and mildew everywhere. No one stayed down there. No one could. But at night, sounds rose up from those empty floors. Furniture scraping across wood, heavy footsteps, slamming doors. And our last night there, everything escalated. That evening, we were all crammed into one room, talking about the strange things we'd each noticed. My brother repeated what he had said about the noises, and right then, like some cruel confirmation, we all heard it. From the abandoned floors below came a deafening racket. Doors slamming, bangs so loud they echoed through the building. It wasn't the kind of sound a fist makes when you pound a door. No, it was louder, stronger. It reverberated through the walls, rolling up through 3 empty floors. We sat frozen, listening. Nobody dared go out into the hall. Fear gripped every one of us. That night, all the cousins dragged their blankets into one room. "It's our last night," they said. "Let's stay together." We tried to laugh, tried to act like it was a sleepover. But no one really slept. We just lay there, wide-eyed, listening for more. The next morning, we checked out. On the way out, I casually asked one of the hotel workers, "Is there some kind of problem with this place?" At first, he smiled and said, "No, sir, nothing at all." But another worker, standing nearby, spoke up quietly. "Things do happen here," he said. "I'm new, but I've already seen something. A woman on the lower floor. Since that day, I never go down there alone." I stared at him. "Why didn't you tell us?" He shrugged. "If we told people, they'd leave, and I'd get blamed for it." We had stayed there 10 nights. 10 nights of strange knocks, shadows, feelings we couldn't explain. And they knew. While everyone else finished packing, I stayed back in our room for a moment to grab my last bag. That's when it happened. As I walked toward the door, I heard footsteps on the stairs behind me, slow, heavy, deliberate. I froze. The moment I stopped, the footsteps stopped too. My heart pounded. I turned around. Nothing. Just the stairwell, dark and empty. But I knew what I felt. Something had been following me, and when I stopped, it stopped too. The air felt heavier than before, pressing down on me. A chill slid across my back. I muttered a prayer under my breath, grabbed my bag, and left without looking back.
We drove out of Estes Park that morning, heading toward Denver, and then eventually home. But I'll never forget that hotel. 10 days in a place buried underground with its abandoned floors, its echoing knocks, and its shadows on the stairs. It taught me something. Beauty in the mountains during the day can turn into pure terror at night. And sometimes, hotels keep secrets their staff will never tell you until it's too late.
Back in 2013, my family moved from one small city in North Carolina to another. We had been living in a cramped little rental for a few years, and when my dad found a better place in a nicer neighborhood, we jumped at the chance. The house looked beautiful from the outside, white siding, a neat little porch, and a wide yard. Inside, it wasn't huge, but it felt comfortable. 2 bedrooms, a living room, a kitchen, and a single bathroom. My parents took the room on the left side of the living room, and my sisters and I shared the one on the right. For the first couple of months, everything seemed fine. A family with a young kid lived downstairs, and another family lived on the top floor. The building had 3 levels, and all were occupied. We got along best with the neighbors below us, who came by often. But then someone mentioned something to my mom. "Did you ever check the history of this house before moving in?" That thought hadn't even crossed our minds. A relative later told my mom that a man had taken his own life there, and his wife, who was connected to our extended family somehow, had lost her mind afterward. We had no idea about any of this when we moved in. My mom came home shaken after hearing it, but my sisters and I tried to calm her down. "It's just stories, Mom. Don't think about it." We should have paid more attention. It started small. Around 2 or 2:30 in the morning, we'd hear water running in the bathroom, like someone was showering. The lights in the living room would be off when we went to bed, but on when we woke up. We figured it was my dad. He always got up early to pray. But when we asked, he said he hadn't touched the lights. At the same time, we all began changing in ways we couldn't explain. I'd always been quiet, but I became irritable, snappy. My sisters fought constantly. My mom grew short-tempered. It was like the house itself was feeding anger into us. One night, my mom suddenly snapped. She doused herself in cooking oil and tried to set herself on fire. We barely managed to stop her. After that, she started getting sick constantly. When she was outside the house, at the hospital, at my grandmother's, even just walking in the park, she was fine. But the moment she stepped back inside, she grew restless, anxious, frail. Our lives were unraveling. One night, my grandmother stayed over. She slept on a bed in the living room. It was closest to the bathroom. My dad was away for work. Sometime in the night, my grandmother woke up. She saw my mom asleep with her arm dangling off the bed. A tall, shadowy man was crouched there. He was sucking at her hand as if drinking her blood. My grandmother bolted upright and shouted, "Who's there?" Silence.
The figure vanished instantly. She never told anyone what she saw until later. Soon after, my mom started seeing things too. One night, she woke up and saw a thin girl standing by her bed. She looked exactly like my heavier sister. My mom whispered her name, Amber. Amber? But the girl only grinned with a terrifying smile. Then she vanished into the dark. It didn't talk about these things with each other, but each of us knew something was terribly wrong. At night, dishes clattered and banged as if thrown from the third floor to the first. We asked the neighbors about it in the morning, but no one admitted to making the noise. Everyone heard it, but no one was responsible. Next door was an abandoned banquet hall, once used for weddings, now decaying and silent. Or at least, it should have been silent. Sometimes sounds drifted from inside. Footsteps, dragging noises, faint music. The whole area felt poisoned. By then, we had started praying more, keeping the house as clean as possible, trying to keep light inside the place. But the house kept fighting back. My dad noticed something strange. Around 2:30 a.m., always the same time, he'd hear dishes being washed, footsteps moving around, lights switching on. He stayed quiet about it, not wanting to scare us. Meanwhile, my mom grew worse. Some nights, she'd open the front door in the middle of the night, walk outside, and sit on the curb, refusing to come back in. My dad had to coax her back. Sometimes she'd lash out at us, hitting and yelling, like someone else was inside her. Whenever we stayed elsewhere, at my grandmother's or an aunt's, she was fine. Back home, the darkness returned.
One afternoon, I was alone in the living room, watching TV. It was one of those old, bulky sets with the glass screen that reflected everything behind you. The house was quiet. Suddenly, I heard crying. At first, I ignored it, but it grew louder, sobbing, desperate. I opened the door, checked outside. Nothing. I turned off the TV, but the sound lingered in my head. Then I caught movement in the reflection. Through the TV screen, I saw him, a tall man dressed in white with a long white beard, sitting behind me, weeping. His face turned toward mine, his eyes boring into me through the glass. I froze. My blood turned cold. Pretending I hadn't seen him, I inched backward toward the door. My hand shook as I reached for the knob. Then I flung the door open and bolted outside, straight to the street, where I sat trembling until my mom came home. She yelled at me for sitting out there, but I said nothing. I couldn't tell her, not then. We finally called in a pastor to pray over the house. He told us there were spirits living there, a whole family of them. They didn't hate us, he said, because we prayed and kept the place clean, but they wanted the house to themselves. Not long after, my mom dreamed that one of them came to her.
He pointed to her smallest finger, signaling for the youngest child in our family, my baby sister. "She's beautiful," the figure said. "Give her to us." My mom refused. "I won't give you anything. Leave us alone." From then on, she couldn't stand being in the house at all. She'd be admitted to the hospital repeatedly. She'd clutch her chest as if invisible hands were squeezing her heart. We had no choice. We left the house. The moment we moved out, everything changed. My mom began to recover, though her mind remained fragile. My sisters and I were able to focus on school again. Life slowly returned to normal. But sometimes, when I close my eyes, I still see that man in white, reflected in the TV screen, staring straight at me with those sorrowful, haunted eyes.
I grew up in a huge old company house in Pennsylvania. My dad worked for the railroad. He was a senior manager, and more than 6,000 people worked under him. The house they gave us was massive, like a small mansion. We spent our entire childhood and teenage years there. When I got married, it was to a cousin on my mom's side. Her family lived in a 5-story house in a suburban neighborhood outside Pittsburgh. The place was split into different sections. My husband and I moved into one portion along with his mother and my sister-in-law. Downstairs, my husband's older brother and his wife lived. Privacy didn't exist in that house. My room had a small storage space attached, and every 10 minutes, someone would be digging through it for something. I always felt like there were eyes on me, like I was never truly alone. Even before kids, I'd sit in my room and feel the pressure of someone else breathing, pacing, moving just out of sight. When my first son was born, he later passed away. My husband decided to build a small extra room and bathroom on the 3rd floor since space was so tight. That's when we moved upstairs. My other kids, a boy and 2 girls, were born after that. And as they grew and started school, the strange little disturbances never really stopped. Whenever I stood in the kitchen, I'd feel someone standing behind me, breathing against my neck. I'd hear footsteps cross the hall. I tried not to pay attention, but one afternoon, something happened that I couldn't ignore. Part 2. The Laughter. It was a winter day, quiet in the house. My husband was at work, my kids were at school. I had finished breakfast dishes and was standing at the sink washing up. My phone was tucked under my pillow in the bedroom, but suddenly, I felt a buzzing in my chest, like a phone vibrating right beside me. I froze. I looked over at the microwave and swear to God it trembled, like someone had bumped it. My heart pounded. Then came the laughter. It wasn't just one person. It was 2, maybe 3 women laughing together. The sound was clear, right in the kitchen, like they were standing just behind me. My whole body went cold. I dropped what I was doing, whispered a prayer under my breath, and stumbled out of the kitchen. I sat in the living room for a while, trying to calm down, trying to breathe. It wasn't the first time I felt watched, but this was the first time I'd heard them.
From then on, whenever I sensed it building again, I'd grab my phone and play prayers or scripture out loud while I worked. It gave me some comfort, but the house never let me forget it was alive. Years passed. My kids grew. My oldest son died of dengue fever while still in high school. My younger son, Daniel, was in 7th or 8th grade when something happened that shook us all. On Saturday nights, the neighborhood kids played late out in the street right by our gate because there was no school the next day. That winter night, Daniel was outside with his friends, the gate wide open so they could run in and out. I called out from the porch, "Danny, come on in, it's late." Daniel just laughed. "Come on, Mom, it's Saturday night, we're just playing." Around 2 a.m., a car rolled up and stopped right in front of our gate. Inside was a driver and an old man sitting in the passenger seat. The kids quickly pulled the wickets out of the street so the car could pass, but it didn't. It just sat there, idling. The old man stared at our gate. 5, maybe 7 minutes just watching our house. Then he called out, "Hey kids, whose house is this?" Daniel pointed. "It's ours." The old man beckoned him over. "Son, are your parents awake? Go get one of them." "It's almost 3 in the morning. They're all asleep." The man's face shifted into something Daniel couldn't quite describe. He leaned closer to the open window and said, "You need to move out of this house." Then both he and the driver tilted their heads upward, scanning our home from the top floor all the way down to the foundation, before driving off without another word. When Daniel told me the next night, my blood ran cold. I didn't let him see how shaken I was. He was still too young, but inside, I knew the man had seen something. One summer afternoon, the house was quiet. My husband's mother was out visiting someone. Only I and one of my sisters-in-law were home. My 2 younger boys were playing together, chasing each other through the halls. They ran up to the unfinished rooftop, still under construction at the time. After a while, I heard Daniel crying, loud, broken sobs. I ran upstairs, heart pounding. My younger son had locked him out on the roof as a prank. When I unlocked the door, Daniel practically threw himself into my arms, trembling and sobbing. At the time, I thought it was just fear of being locked outside under the blazing sun. I scolded his younger brother for scaring him like that, and eventually Daniel calmed down. But 2 months before his death, he told me the truth. "Mom, remember that day on the roof when Osama locked me out?" I nodded. He swallowed hard. "That's not why I cried. When I went to the window by the old storage room, I saw her." "Her?" I asked. He nodded. "A girl. She looked like my cousin Sarah, about 12 years old, same height. But her hair, it was black, and so long it reached her ankles. She was wearing this pale gray gown, and she had her arms stretched out like she was reaching for me. Her back was to me, but then," he shivered as he said it, "then she turned her head all the way around without moving her body, and her face, Mom, it was like a cat. her mouth, her nose, even her eyes. And when I stepped closer, I saw her feet. He paused. They weren't human. They were cat's paws. I couldn't breathe. He told me she laughed when she saw his fear, this high-pitched, awful laugh, and that's when he started crying. By the time I reached him, she was gone. He admitted he never sat alone after that. The terror never left him. My extended family lived just a few streets over, in a huge house with more than 10 rooms. We often visited them. And that's when elders in the family began telling me, "These things aren't just in your house. They follow. They move with you." My grandfather had lived there too, paralyzed in his old age. He was deeply religious, but his children kept him shut away, neglected. When I used to sit with him, he whispered things that made my skin crawl. "Daughter," he told me one afternoon during Ramadan, "these women won't let me fast. They shove food into my mouth. They break my fast against my will." Trembling, I asked him, "What women?" He raised his weak hand and pointed straight past my shoulder. "There, standing right there." I turned. The room was empty. My blood ran cold. He complained often of Sarah, his granddaughter, the same girl Daniel claimed to have seen twisted into something not human. He said he'd hear her shoes clicking up and down the stairs over and over until his head throbbed. One day he yelled at her, "Stop it! Can't you see I'm sick?" He swore to me that when she turned her head toward him, it wasn't his granddaughter at all, but a black cat, crouched on the stairs, staring straight into his eyes. That house of my relatives was strange in other ways too. I once walked through each of the 15 rooms and checked every clock. They all showed exactly 1 o'clock. Another time, when I turned on the faucet, red water, like blood, poured out. My uncle told me to check the water tank, thinking maybe some animal had fallen in. But the tank was spotless. Nothing inside. When I came back down, the water was clear again. Things like that happened all the time, in both houses. I have never been able to escape them. And deep down, I know they're still following us.
My name is Amir, and I grew up in Chicago. This happened back in 2007 when my family moved into what was supposed to be our dream home. My dad was originally from a small town in Indiana, but all of his business was in the city. By the grace of God, his work was doing really well, and that's why he decided to bring the whole family to live with him in Chicago. We were a big family, 5 brothers, 1 sister, my mom, and my grandmother. We had first moved to the city in 1998, but for a number of reasons we kept changing houses. Finally, in 2006, Dad bought an old factory lot. He had it demolished and built a house there. By early 2007, the construction was finished and we moved in. It was a 2-story house with an open rooftop terrace. At first, everything felt completely normal. Nothing strange, nothing unusual. But as the years went by and we kids got older,
Little by little, the house began to show its true face. It started with footsteps upstairs when no one was there, knocks on doors when everyone was asleep. My grandmother and mom were very religious women, always reading the Bible, praying late at night. Sometimes, in the middle of her prayers, Grandma would hear footsteps pacing across the floor above her. She would raise her voice, firmly, "Whoever you are, be quiet, I'm praying." She wasn't afraid of anything. She was strong, fearless, always up before dawn for her prayers. But in 2015, she passed away. That's when everything changed. The strange things we used to just feel started happening right in front of us. One evening, we all went to a family wedding. At the reception, Dad started feeling sick, so he came home early, alone. He was resting in his bedroom when he suddenly heard something in the kitchen. At first, he ignored it, thinking it was just the house settling, but then he heard the sound of dishes clattering, like someone was counting plates. His first thought was that maybe a stray cat had gotten in, but then he remembered the house was locked tight. No animal could have gotten in. So he sat up, uneasy, and stepped out of his room. That's when he saw her. A woman with long, loose hair walking slowly toward the kitchen. He thought maybe Mom and the others had returned, so he called out for her, but no one answered. When he went into the kitchen, there was no one. Nothing had fallen. Nothing was out of place. Shaken, Dad grabbed his keys and went outside until we returned. When he told Mom what happened, she was terrified. But we couldn't just pack up and leave. That house had cost everything Dad had. We had nowhere else to go.
My youngest brother, Ahmed, was 16 then. He was a good-looking kid, and honestly, the house seemed to have a strange fixation on him. One night, around 3 a.m., he was asleep in the living room. Something woke him, and when he opened his eyes, he saw a woman in bright red clothes sitting right beside him, staring at him without blinking. Ahmed froze. His whole body trembled with fear. He squeezed his eyes shut, praying it would go away. When he finally dared to open them again, the woman was gone. Terrified, he bolted to our parents' room and slept there the rest of the night. The next morning, when he told Mom, she brushed it off. "It was just a bad dream," she said. But it wasn't a dream. A few nights later, the three of us younger brothers stayed up late playing games and didn't fall asleep until around 2 a.m. I was lying in the middle, with Ahmed on one side and Hamza on the other. Suddenly, Ahmed started shaking violently. I grabbed him and whispered, "What's wrong?" He stammered, There's a woman sitting right there." I told him to turn toward me, to ignore it, to sleep. In the morning, he admitted it was the same woman in red, sitting, staring. Not long after, we were all playing up on the rooftop when Ahmed and Hamza got into an argument. Ahmed stormed downstairs. A few minutes later, something told me to go check on him. When I got down there, my blood ran cold. Ahmed was lying on the floor, unconscious. His head was split open, blood pooling beneath him. We rushed him to the hospital. He needed 10 stitches. That was when Dad, desperate for answers, invited a spiritual healer, someone his friend recommended. The man walked through the house, upstairs, onto the rooftop, sat down for a moment, and then stood abruptly. He told Dad, "There's something here. Something strong. Something evil. This is beyond me." Later, Dad did some digging. He learned that the property had once been a factory, and that everyone who worked there had suffered. Businesses collapsed, lives ruined. Nobody had lasted long in that place. Things only got worse after that. Mom's health started failing. Money and belongings disappeared from the house. Dad got into a serious car accident. And whenever we spoke about leaving, we would hear a woman's voice echoing from the upstairs floor. "I won't let you leave." Over and over, that voice taunted us. Finally, when Dad managed to build another house across town, he had Mom and my sister move first to keep them safe. Then came moving day. As we were packing, Hamza and I went upstairs. That's when we heard it. The voices of our older brothers fighting. At first, we thought it was real, but then we looked and saw them standing in the room, staring straight at us, their mouths curling into something unnatural. "Run," they said. "Run before it's too late." But our brothers weren't there. They were downstairs. That was the last straw. We never moved back. That house still belongs to us, but for the past 8 years, it's been locked up, empty, rotting away. No one dares go inside. Now we live in our new home, finally at peace, safe. But sometimes, late at night, I wonder if the woman in red still walks through those dark halls, waiting for someone to come back. Those were tonight's stories, shared with us by Adam, Michael, Ahmed, and 2 families who experienced horrors inside the places they once called home. To all of you, thank you. Your stories remind us that the line between safety and terror is thinner than we think. And now, if you have a true encounter, a night you can't forget, or a place that still haunts you, send it in. Your story could be the next one told here on Spooky Stories. And don't forget, like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the bell icon so you never miss what comes next. Stay safe, stay aware, and remember, sometimes the scariest stories are the ones that are true.